Georgetown University's debate hall pulsed with electricity. The air, thick with anticipation and the low hum of whispers, buzzed like a hive on the edge of chaos. Students leaned forward in their seats. Reporters adjusted their lenses. Phones were raised, already streaming. This wasn't just another political forum. No, tonight, the ground would shift. At the center of it all, like a prince surveying his court, sat Baron Trump. 19. Calm. Calculated. His slim 63-kilo frame was wrapped in a crisp navy blazer that clung to his shoulders with authority. He adjusted it once, smoothly, purposefully, as if to say, "I was born for this." His chin high, posture straight, he radiated that particular confidence only the legacy-born can master. The Trump name didn't just precede him. It wrapped around him like armor. Across from him, her gaze steady and her smile razor-sharp, sat Congresswoman Karoline Leavitt. At 29, she was already a political firebrand. Elegant but unflinching, with the eyes of someone who'd faced a media storm and walked out the other side sharper than before. A rising star from New Hampshire, she had built her reputation brick by brick, first as a press secretary, then as a disruptor in Congress. Tonight, though, she wasn't here to mentor or mingle. She had come to win. The topic? How to engage Gen Z in American politics. The setting? A showdown masquerading as a dialogue. Dr. Jessica Michelle, chair of Georgetown's Political Science Department, introduced them with the careful neutrality of someone who knew full well that fire was about to meet gasoline. "Tonight, we welcome two formidable voices," she began, but her voice was nearly drowned by the thrum of audience excitement and the clicking of cameras. Even C-SPAN had gone live. And then, silence. The kind that presses against your ears. The kind that comes right before the storm. Baron leaned into the mic, his voice steady, his delivery unervingly calm. "I don't mean to be disrespectful," he began, eyes locked onto Leavitt, "but your past makes it pretty clear, you're not exactly the best person to guide America's youth into politics." Boom. The audience sucked in a collective breath. The kind of moment that makes headlines. A few students murmured. A sharp gasp rippled from the front row. Phones caught the split-second flash in Leavitt's eyes. Was that a smirk? And then, without blinking, without even adjusting in her seat, she reached for her phone. That one subtle move, almost casual, ignited a new tension in the room. The press leaned in. The students' chatter hushed into reverent silence. What did she have? What she played next would detonate the debate into legend. But before we pull the pin on this political grenade, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because what happens next doesn't just change one night at Georgetown. It rewrites the entire conversation on youth, power, and the next generation of conservative firebrands. This wasn't a debate between Trump's youngest and a polished congresswoman. This was a duel. Baron Trump, the towering prodigy with the name that echoed through every American living room, had been untouchable, until now. He had carved out a space at Georgetown as more than just the sun. He was the giant, a nickname whispered in student forums and classroom corners. Not just for his 6-foot frame, but for the way he shredded opponents in debate like tissue paper. He hadn't lost. Not once. Not even close. He chose politics when his siblings chose profit. He studied constitutional law while others chased clout. And now, with the Young Republicans Club swelling in size and whispers of a political future starting to stick, tonight was supposed to be his coronation. But Leavitt had come prepared, not to spar, but to strike. A daughter of New Hampshire, forged in small-town grit and Capitol Hill chaos, she had weathered more political tempests than most veterans twice her age. She wasn't here to hand out platitudes or nod politely. No. Karoline Leavitt had been digging. Quietly. Strategically. And what she found, what she had locked on that phone, was a revelation timed to perfection. This wasn't just politics. This was legacy versus insurgency. Youth versus youth. Trump's future versus the Republican firebrand who refused to kneel. And as the crowd held its breath and cameras zoomed in, one thing was now certain: this debate would not be forgotten. Not by Georgetown. Not by C-SPAN. And definitely not by Baron Trump. This was it. Baron Trump's first public debate since stepping into adulthood, and the spotlight didn't just find him, it devoured him. Across the table sat Karoline Leavitt, cool as ice and sharp as a blade, sharing the stage with a Trump for the very first time. The setup? Explosive. The stakes? Sky high. Dr. Martinez, calm as ever, posed the opening question like she didn't feel the electricity vibrating through the room. How can young Americans become more actively involved in the political process? Leavitt leaned forward first. Her voice was measured but energetic, delivered with that polished poise that got her elected at 25. She talked about expanding voter registration campaigns, embedding civic education into school curriculums, and fighting for youth representation that actually meant something. Applause broke out. Loud, sustained. Then it was Baron's turn. He leaned toward the mic like a general stepping onto the battlefield. His voice rang out clear, smooth, almost too smooth. "Thank you, Dr. Martinez," he said, flashing a polite smile. Representative Leavitt made some good points. Pause. And then, he dropped the match. "But I have to question whether she is the right person to lead America's youth." Gasps. A few awkward laughs. A couple of whoa-s from the back row. Baron didn't blink. He was just warming up. He went on, his tone still respectful, but his words slicing sharper and sharper. "Congresswoman Leavitt represents everything wrong with modern right-wing politics. Less leadership, more theater. Less vision, more viral clips. Her committee hearings? They're stage shows. Plenty of lights, lots of noise, but no substance." Phones came out instantly. Fingers flew across screens. This wasn't a debate anymore, this was content, and the whole room could feel it. Karoline didn't flinch. Her eyebrows arched, just a hair. Her expression was unreadable. But her silence spoke volumes. Baron pressed on. "Her voting record sticks to the party line so tightly, it excludes independent thinkers, pushes away moderates, and ignores young people. How can a figure so polarizing even pretend to stand for unity?" Oof. Now it was Karoline's turn. She leaned into the mic slowly, her voice cool but edged with ice. "Mr. Trump," she said, pausing for maximum effect, "I appreciate your passion. But if we're going to talk about who's fit to lead America's youth, maybe start by looking a little closer to home. Like, say, your own family's political legacy." Crowd reaction, immediate. A low chorus of "damn" swept through the room like a gust of wind. Phones zoomed in. Dr. Martinez's lips parted, stunned. Baron's jaw tensed. The shift was subtle, but unmistakable. For the first time tonight, he was rattled. "My family's record is clear," he replied, slower now, heavier. "We didn't play to the cameras in Washington, we got things done. Real wins. Real impact." But Leavitt didn't let up. "Right," she said, voice rising just enough to cut through the tension. "Like January 6th. Attempting to overturn an election? Multiple indictments? Real impact, sure, but at what cost to democracy?" Boom. A body blow. The crowd tensed like a coiled spring. And then, it happened. Baron stood. At nearly 2 meters tall, he loomed like a shadow cast across the stage. His voice thundered, not shouted, but with the power of someone who had heard his father speak to crowds of thousands. He wasn't asking for the floor. He was taking it. "Representative Leavitt," he said, steel in every word, your Twitter theatrics might rack up likes, but they don't qualify you to guide America's youth. Your radical soundbites, your inflammatory language, and your disregard for constitutional order don't just make you a poor leader, they make you a threat to democracy itself. That last line, a threat to democracy, landed like a grenade. The room froze. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate. Dr. Martinez looked like she might step in, but she didn't. Couldn't. Not yet. Leavitt sat back slowly, folding her hands, her expression unreadable. Calm, but calculating. And then, she moved. Deliberate. Silent. She reached down and unzipped her leather briefcase. The click of the zipper felt deafening. Barron's eyes followed her hand. Everyone's did. She pulled out her phone and held it like a weapon. "Mr. Trump," she said, her voice low, almost conversational, "before we decide who's fit or unfit, I think the audience deserves a little clarity." Barron narrowed his eyes. "What are you doing?" His tone remained even, but the undercurrent of panic was undeniable. A tightness in his voice. The first fracture in his bulletproof confidence. Leavitt looked directly at him. Then at the crowd. Then, coolly, into the camera. "This recording is from 3 weeks ago," she said, thumb hovering over the play button. "I think you'll all find it relevant." Barron's lips parted, just slightly. He looked like someone who realized the trap he thought he was setting had just slammed shut on him. Leavitt leaned forward. "This is what Mr. Trump really thinks when the cameras are off. When the audience isn't watching. When he believes he's in control." Then, click. She hit play. Then, Barron's voice. Echoing through the hall, cool and unmistakable. "To be honest, I don't really believe half of what I'm saying in these debates. It's just strategy. A way to position myself for what's next." The sound cut through the room like glass under pressure. Students blinked. Some gasped. A few hands flew to mouths. Phones, already filming, zoomed in. This wasn't spin. This wasn't theater. It was confession. These kids at Georgetown? They're obsessed with constitutional law. But it's all just a show. The air seemed to shift, buzzing, stunned, almost unreal. Faces turned. Some in disbelief. Some in morbid fascination. Karoline Leavitt didn't move an inch. Barron was no longer speaking live. His voice came from a recording, but the effect was the same as if he were standing on stage and handing his mask to the audience. "My dad always told me, say what people want to hear, get the power first. Then do what you want with it." That landed hard. Too hard. Murmurs. One guy whispered, "Did he just say that out loud?" Someone in the back laughed, nervously. But it died instantly. A new voice entered, calmer, older. "So what are your real views? What do you actually believe?" And then, Barron again. This time quieter. More measured. "Honestly? My father crossed the line on a lot of things. January 6th was a catastrophe. But I can't come out and say that. Not yet. The base would eat me alive. So I'm playing along. Building my profile. When the time's right, I'll move more center." Shock didn't erupt now. It sank. Like weight dropped into water. The audience didn't know what to do with what they were hearing. He hadn't just slipped up. He'd opened a door no politician willingly cracks. That woman, Leavitt? She's actually sharp. If you break it all down, most of her stances aren't that extreme. But calling her dangerous gets a reaction. And that's what counts. Eyes shot back to Karoline. But she sat still. Expression unreadable. This was no longer her moment to fight. It was her moment to witness. So you don't buy into her being a threat? The voice asked. No. Not at all, Barron replied. She's probably better prepared than most GOP reps, but that doesn't help me. The narrative needs tension. Needs villains. The Trump brand thrives on enemies. And then, the final strike. We agree on stuff. Climate. Justice reform. Even the economy in places. But I'll stand there and call her a radical. Why? Because that's how you gain traction in this game. You don't win by being honest. You win by feeding the story. The audio stopped. The silence that followed was not the silence of boredom or confusion. It was something far heavier. Something terminal. Barron stood there, no longer the image of confidence. His jaw was slack. His skin pale. That proud stance from earlier had collapsed. He looked like someone waking from a dream, only to realize it was actually a nightmare. He cleared his throat, tried to steady himself. But his voice betrayed him. That was a private conversation. It's being misrepresented. But no one was buying it. No one was breathing. The myth had cracked, and underneath was just a boy in borrowed armor. Karoline Leavitt finally stood. But she didn't raise her voice. She didn't gloat. She let the silence wrap around her words like steel. Yes. That was a private conversation, she said. Held here on campus. With a journalism student. A student who believed the truth matters more than a curated image. She turned slightly, addressing not just Barron, but the entire room now. Mr. Trump, she continued, firm and composed, earlier tonight you questioned my credibility. My leadership. My right to speak to young Americans. But this recording, your own words, show that even you don't believe what you said about me. Phones kept filming. No one even blinked now. You said I'm capable. That we agree on key policies. That the radical label was just branding, a weapon, not a belief. She stepped forward slightly. Not to threaten, but to claim the space. You made your entire case against me knowing it was false. Not because of principle, but because it plays well. Barron said nothing. He couldn't. And in that moment, it was clear, she wasn't just the better debater. She was the only one in the room still standing on solid ground. You weren't debating tonight, she finished. You were auditioning. And now, the curtain's down. History didn't just happen in big speeches. It happened in cracks, in silence, in the quiet crumbling of a name that once commanded attention. And Barron Trump had just been unmasked by his own voice. Leavitt didn't blink. She stood there, unshaken, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade sharpened by principle. So let me ask you, Mr. Trump, who's truly unfit, she said, her words slow, deliberate. A congresswoman who drafts legislation, shows up for her constituents, and speaks the truth, even when it's inconvenient? Or a man who wears a mask, says what's convenient, and builds his political identity on a lie? Barron opened his mouth. Closed it. Tried again. Nothing came out. The crowd watched him closely, not like an audience watching a hero, but like a jury witnessing the moment a defendant realizes the verdict. Leavitt didn't let up. You speak of constitutional values, she continued, stepping forward, voice steady but fierce, but the heart of a democracy is honesty. It's the contract between elected leaders and the people they serve. If politics is theater, then the people deserve more than actors, they deserve truth-tellers. Whispers began to swirl across the auditorium like smoke. Is this real? Did he really say that? He's finished. The same intelligence and charisma that once dazzled Barron's classmates and professors now seemed hollow, like a stage set from behind, flimsy and fake. The aura was gone. All that remained was the wreckage. Then he spoke. Barely. didn't want them to hear what I really think." The words fell from his lips like dead weight. There was no strength behind them, only the quiet panic of a young man watching the scaffolding of his image collapse. His voice didn't sound like a leader's anymore. It sounded like a child's. Leavitt didn't look at him. She looked straight into the camera. Right into the homes and phones of the country. "These students, these young people, they are your future constituents. And what did they see tonight? Not a leader. Not a visionary. But someone who came here to mislead them. To exploit their idealism for personal gain." She paused, her words hanging like judgment. "This is the disease of modern politics, turning public service into a performance, replacing truth with branding, and using voters as props in a well-rehearsed script." Now she turned to face Barron fully. "You want to talk about impropriety," she said, cool and controlled. "Then let's talk about the real violation, lying to voters. Fabricating enemies. Building a movement on false outrage, all while privately admitting you don't believe a word of it." The audience, electrified, erupted. Not polite applause. Not academic approval. But real, raw, thunderous applause, waves of it crashing through the room. Cheers. Shouts. Students rising to their feet, clapping like they'd just witnessed something more than politics. Justice. And Barron? He stood there, unable to respond. No prepared line. No comeback. Just a pale, shaken figure dwarfed by a truth too big to spin. For the first time in his young life, Barron Trump had been defeated. Truly defeated. The debate concluded, but the moment kept expanding. Energy surged through the auditorium, conversations, whispers, disbelief. History had unfolded in front of them, and everyone knew it. Phones were still recording. Clips were already being posted online. Karoline Leavitt's quiet takedown. Barron's stunned expression. The look of a boy caught pretending to be a man. Dr. Martinez tried to retake the mic, but the event had slipped out of her hands. It was no longer a debate. It was a media earthquake. Reporters swarmed the front. Students crowded the aisles. Barron barely managed to collect his notes. His face, once practiced and confident, was now tight with embarrassment. He looked smaller. Younger. Fragile. He muttered under his breath, avoiding cameras. No questions. Security helped him slip out a side exit, shielding him from the flash of phones and press microphones. But the damage had already gone viral. Within minutes, the hashtag Barron Exposed was lighting up every platform. Twitter. Instagram. TikTok. The clip of Barron's voice, calmly confessing to political deceit, circulated like wildfire. The moment his face dropped after the recording, it was already a meme. Over 100,000 shares in the first hour alone. Then came the outrage. Conservative Twitter was in chaos. A prominent political account, once a diehard supporter, at Barron Trump 2044, tweeted in disbelief. "How do you lead a movement when your entire campaign is built on lies? This changes everything." Another account. "He's not the future. He's the problem." And another, harsher still. "We thought Barron was different. But he's just another opportunist in a suit." The fall wasn't slow. It was instantaneous. And while Barron Trump vanished behind the doors of the university, somewhere far away from cameras and applause, Karoline Leavitt stood on that stage, calm, focused, unflinching. She hadn't just won a debate. She had made a statement. And America was listening. While Barron Trump's reputation crumbled, Twitter lit up in flames, and Karoline Leavitt's name was written in gold. Liberals flooded the platform with praise. Karoline Leavitt just delivered the most iconic political takedown of the decade. That recording was surgical. No shouting. Just facts. And it obliterated him. They'll teach this debate in civics classes. It's a masterclass in grace under pressure. Barron had called her inappropriate. She never raised her voice. Never flinched. She let his own words speak, and they did more damage than any attack she could have launched. This wasn't just a political defeat. It was a case study in how to confront opportunism with integrity. As Barron unraveled, Karoline held her ground like stone in a storm. Calm. Focused. Unshakable. That was leadership. By sunrise, headlines screamed across every screen. Georgetown scandal, Barron Trump unmasked. Leaked recording devastates Trump heir's credibility. On CNN, it was the lead story. They aired the footage on a loop, Barron's voice, the shifting expression on his face, the silent implosion. The Chiron read. Trump's son caught contradicting himself on tape. CNN's senior political analyst didn't mince words. This could be the end of the Trump legacy as a generational political force. Barron was the torchbearer for 2040. Now he's the cautionary tale. At Fox News, the confusion was palpable. Defending Barron meant defending hypocrisy. Ignoring the tape meant losing their audience. One host weekly suggested the clip might have been selectively edited, but the usual fire was gone. Even the network's loyal base was turning away. MSNBC pounced. Panel after panel dissected the collapse like a post-mortem. One commentator delivered the harshest blow. This isn't just a misstep, it's a mirror. It reflects the very rot at the core of performative politics. Here's a young man, raised in power, who thinks democracy is a costume drama and voters are extras. And on the ground at Georgetown? The tremors were still being felt. The Young Republicans Club, once overflowing with excitement about Barron's arrival, was hemorrhaging members. Within a week, over 60% had resigned. Second-year student Jessica Chen stood outside the debate hall, her voice cracking. He changed my mind on issues. I trusted him. I believed in him. Now I find out it was all strategy. All fake? It feels like betrayal. In the classroom halls, it wasn't anger that followed Barron's name. It was something quieter. Heavier. Disappointment. Professor Daniel Kors, who had praised Barron's early work in constitutional law, no longer defended him. We welcome political diversity here. But this is not debate. This is manipulation. We don't reward dishonesty at Georgetown, especially when it masquerades as leadership. Even among his former allies, the silence was damning. And Karoline? She didn't celebrate. She didn't tweet a victory lap or mock her opponent. She stepped back and let the public draw its own conclusions. In an exclusive CNN interview, she spoke plainly. This isn't about humiliating someone. It's about reminding the country what integrity looks like. Voters, especially young ones, deserve leaders who mean what they say. We've had enough of this two-faced performance politics. The administration at Georgetown remained publicly silent. Behind closed doors, however, tensions were high. They couldn't formally punish Barron for his opinions, but the ethics breach loomed large. The debate had put not only Barron, but the university itself, under a microscope. 3 days later, Barron's legal team issued a carefully worded statement. The recording shared by Representative Leavitt was taken from a private conversation, released without my permission, and misrepresented. My political views are sincere, and I stand by my criticism of her record. What happened was not leadership, it was character assassination. But the world had already moved on. The damage wasn't just public, it was personal. Barron's face had become the very symbol of hypocrisy. A walking contradiction. A cautionary tale about what happens when you trade authenticity for ambition. Even among his diehard supporters, cracks had formed. The account at Barron Trump 2044, once his loudest fan page, posted in exasperation. "This isn't what we signed up for. If the future of conservatism is lying your way into power, then count us out." Another viral tweet summed it up in a bitter punchline. "He says politics is theater. But he's mad people saw behind the curtain." And as the hashtags trended and memes spread, Karoline Leavitt kept her composure. She understood the weight of what had just happened. It wasn't just a win. It was a warning. "This was never about me," she said. "It's about accountability. About refusing to let lies shape our future. If we want real leadership in this country, we need to stop applauding actors and start demanding honesty." And with that, the storm that began in one college debate hall was now rewriting the rules of an entire political generation. Karoline Leavitt's words didn't just linger, they rippled. Her final statement, broadcast across the nation, struck a nerve in every home, every classroom, every newsroom that still believed politics could be more than performance. And the response was seismic. Her office reported the fallout, if it could even be called that. It was a groundswell. A 400% surge in grassroots donations within a week. Over 200,000 new followers across her social media platforms. Public endorsements from national Democratic leaders, who now whispered her name in the same breath as the future. She had walked onto that Georgetown stage as a young congresswoman. She left it a generational voice. Meanwhile, Baron Trump was being disassembled, digitally, publicly, relentlessly. The very machine that had once boosted his image now shredded it without mercy. He had been trending. Now he was unraveling. Political talk shows dissected the fallout like autopsies. Dr. Melissa Galton from American University summed it up on MSNBC. "This wasn't just a gotcha moment. It was a mirror." The recording exposed what many suspected: for some rising stars, belief is secondary to branding. And when perception replaces principle, democracy erodes. She paused. Then said what many feared. "This is how empires fall, not from attacks, but from rot within." But the Georgetown debate had become more than a viral spectacle. It was a cultural referendum. And it delivered a rare clarity: truth had won. Baron Trump's fall wasn't just political. It was personal. Philosophical. Generational. He had become the symbol of a certain kind of politics, the polished, strategic, hollow kind. And in a single recorded moment, the illusion shattered. 6 months later, he still roamed the stone halls of Georgetown. But the spotlight had vanished. He no longer drew cameras, followers, or questions. He slipped through campus like a ghost in plain sight, haunted by a version of himself that the world no longer believed in. He spent hours buried in books in the back corners of the library. No debates. No podiums. Just whispers. "That's him. I thought he transferred. Why doesn't he leave?" He was still tall. Still composed. But something inside had collapsed. Across campus, a different name echoed now. Leavitt. Her performance from that night still aired on news channels. C-SPAN played it in full. PBS held a special on Youth in Politics. The New York Times dubbed her the voice of a generation guided not by volume, but by vision. Her speeches in Congress were now frequently quoted in high school civics classes. And the message she delivered at Georgetown still resonated like a bell tolling through America's political conscience. Leadership isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about having the courage to speak the truth, when it matters most. Then came the final revelation. The voice behind the recording. The one who captured the moment that changed everything. In an interview with the Georgetown Voice, student journalist William Flo stepped forward. "It wasn't a trap," she said. "I was just interviewing him for a feature on young conservatives. He dropped the mask himself. I hit record. He didn't hold back. He just said it. The twist wasn't that someone caught him. The twist was that he chose to speak the truth when he thought no one would hear, and couldn't survive it when they did. In the end, it wasn't a scandal or smear campaign. It was something much more devastating. It was self-revelation. The sun dipped behind the red brick spires of Georgetown as students gathered on benches, still replaying clips from that unforgettable night on their phones. In the distance, Barron walked alone. No cameras. No followers. No one stopped him. No one looked back. And far away, in a different city, a packed auditorium roared with applause as Karoline Leavitt stepped on stage. She didn't pause for effect. She didn't need to. Her voice, steady and firm, carried through the crowd. True leadership isn't just telling the truth. It's having the courage to stand for it, loudly, clearly, and when it costs something. America doesn't need more masks. We need faces. Real ones. The applause swelled. This wasn't a celebration of a political win. It was the sound of a country ready to believe again. Final message. If this story moved you, share it. Join the conversation. Tell us what kind of leadership you want to see in the next generation. This is Civic Clash, where real leadership is challenged, revealed, and redefined.